My boyfriend hid a secret second family from me and tried to make me his side chick, so I slammed the door on him for good. A year later, he came back begging, but by now I was friends with the other woman and ready to make him pay. My boyfriend has always been a hipster baddie. We met on Hinge, and he told me I looked like the type of girl he'd let ruin his life. I honestly thought it was kinda cringe, but it was better than the usual hey or how are you that I was used to, so I replied. From there we talked almost every day and found out we had a lot in common. Both of our dads left before we were born, our favorite color was lavender, and we're both oddly terrified of butterflies. And when my friends joked that we were meant to be, a part of me couldn't help but believe it. The first day we met, he wore Doc Martens and a crystal necklace. He brought me to this cute little cocktail bar, one that I always went to with my friends. It was hidden from the main streets, cheap, for Manhattan, very chic. The type of place to have free sanitary pads in the girls' bathroom. Our conversation flowed so well that after the first hour had passed, I jokingly asked if he was gay. "I'm not gay, I'm just emo," was his response. It was so funny that I started falling for him. Because as they say, if you can make her laugh, then you can kiss her too. And on the third date, he popped the big question. Not marriage, not to be his girlfriend. No. He asked if I would enter into an open relationship with him. My eyes widened, and it's safe to say that I was taken aback. But the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like it made sense. After all my past boyfriends had cheated on me. And it's not like I was much ready for commitment either. "Hand me your phone." His voice was convincing, assertive. I handed it to him, not realizing it was unlocked. He went on the app and scrolled through all the boys that had liked me. "You could still explore all these men, while having me as your main piece." He then plastered on a boyish smile that made me giggle. And just like that, my morals went out the window, and I was sold. At first, the rules seemed simple. We had to tell each other about everyone we were involved with. No dating another person. It was both of our first times experimenting with this, so we decided to review the rules every Monday from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. We even scheduled it in our Google calendars. Looking back, there's no way in heck I would have agreed to that BS. But unfortunately, I was a dumb 21-year-old who used my heart to make all my decisions instead of my brain. So not even 2 days later, I was lying in bed unclothed with another man. When the guy had fallen asleep, I was snapping my boyfriend Nick from his bed. Not even to make him jealous, just because the entire thing seemed so nonsensical. And when he stopped replying, I assumed he just went to sleep. But apparently I was wrong, because the next day he showed up to my dorm with flowers and a basket of chocolate. When I looked up at him, there were tears streaming down his face. I was so taken aback that I didn't even know what to say. I just opened the door to let him in. He held me super tight and kissed me deeply. "I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking." I stopped him from saying anything else. We made love right then and there. The rest of the relationship was pretty amazing. We spent the next 8 months visiting nearby cities together and posting those Pinterest couple photos on Instagram. He acted like the dream guy, and even dropped the whole femboy look and became a Zara boy. Blue shirt, sharp collarbone, perfect hair that didn't move, veiny hands. Ugh, my man. So one day when we were lying awake at 3 a.m. and he started screaming at me, my heart started pounding out of my chest. "We gotta go to the hospital," he yelled at the top of his lungs. He didn't give any further explanation, and I didn't need any either. We immediately ran to the car, and I made the 30-minute drive in just 15. By the time we got there, I thought he'd be in extreme pain, or at least walking a little funny. But instead, he ran even faster than me, with perfect form to the reception desk. "Is Anelise here?" he practically yelled in the woman's face. My head was spinning. Anelise? I knew he had a cousin called Anne, so maybe this was her nickname for her? Boy, was I wrong. As we sprinted up the stairs with his hand in mine, I was soon met with a woman screaming her heart out, pushing a baby out of her literal vajayjay. "Nick, what the actual F?" I asked. But he didn't even turn back to look at me, because his eyes were fixated on the woman giving birth. Just waved his hand at me as if to tell me to shut up. "Come on, my love, you got this. I can see our baby girl's head." Adrenaline filled my veins. Our? Who's our? I slowly connected the dots in my head. It had been 9.5 months since we broke up. And the night I was in that guy's bed, Nick's Find My iPhone location was in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. I didn't care at the time, because I thought it wouldn't come up again. When the baby was born, he took her into his arms and asked if I wanted to hold. I smiled and said yes. Not because I wasn't angry. Not because I didn't want to unalive him right there on the spot. But because I was playing the long game, and soon he would regret how he treated me. I held this tiny baby, this innocent little human who had no idea her father was a complete jerk. Her eyes were still closed, her tiny hands curled into fists against my chest. I looked at her little face and felt so many emotions. Anger at Nick, confusion about how I missed all the signs, and weirdly, a strange protectiveness toward this baby who wasn't mine. She was so warm and light in my arms, completely unaware of the drama she'd been born into. After a few minutes, I carefully handed her back to Anelise, who looked exhausted but happy. She gave me a confused look, probably wondering who I was and why I was holding her newborn. I just smiled at her, not wanting to cause a scene in her special moment. Inside, I was screaming, wanting to ask her if she knew about me, if Nick had been playing us both this whole time. Nick seemed oblivious to how messed up the situation was. He kept bouncing between Anelise's bedside and where I was standing, like this was totally normal. At one point he whispered to me, "Isn't she beautiful? I'm a dad now." As if I should be happy for him. His eyes were bright with joy, completely disconnected from the reality of what he'd done. I nodded and excused myself to go to the bathroom. Once inside a stall, I sat down and tried to process what was happening. Nick had gotten another woman pregnant while we were supposedly in an open relationship. He had hidden her entire pregnancy from me. And now he expected me to what? Be the cool girlfriend who's fine with him having a baby with someone else? I stared at my reflection in the small metal mirror on the stall door, barely recognizing the shocked, pale face looking back at me. When I came back, a nurse was showing Anelise how to breastfeed. Nick motioned for me to come closer, but I stayed by the door. I think I should go, I said quietly. Nick looked surprised, like he couldn't understand why I wouldn't want to stay for this beautiful family moment that I wasn't part of. But we just got here, he said, frowning. Yeah, and you just became a dad to a baby I didn't know existed until 20 minutes ago, I replied, keeping my voice low so Anelise wouldn't hear. I wanted to laugh in his face. Instead, I just said, text me when you're done here. We definitely need to talk. Then I walked out, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. The drive home was a blur. I kept replaying everything in my head. The open relationship suggestion, the nights Nick was busy, the times he took phone calls in another room. It all made sense now. He'd been with Anelise the whole time, watching her grow his child while playing house with me. The radio played some sad love song that made me want to punch the dashboard. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on my bed, staring at the wall, thinking about what to do next. Part of me wanted to block Nick on everything and never speak to him again. But another part of me, the petty part that had smiled while holding his baby, wanted him to face consequences for what he'd done. I fell asleep eventually, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. When I woke up, I had 17 missed calls and 32 texts from Nick, ranging from "I can explain" to "please don't be mad" to "I need you." I read them all but didn't respond. I needed time to think, to plan my next move. Because one thing was certain, Nick wasn't getting away with this. Not by a long shot. I didn't respond to Nick's messages for 3 whole days. I just needed time to process everything without his manipulative bullpoop clouding my judgment. My roommate Carolyn brought me ice cream and listened to me rant about the situation for hours. She kept saying I should just block him and move on, but something inside me wasn't ready to let go yet. Not like this. On the 4th day, Nick showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was in my pajamas, hair unwashed, scrolling through Netflix when I heard the knock. I peeked through the peephole and saw him standing there with this pathetic puppy dog look on his face. For a second, I considered not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to hear what possible explanation he could have. I opened the door but blocked the entrance with my body. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Nick's eyes were red like he'd been crying. He started rambling about how scared he was when he found out Anelise was pregnant, how he didn't know how to tell me, how he thought he could handle both relationships. The more he talked, the angrier I got. He wasn't apologizing for lying, he was making excuses. I told him I needed more time and shut the door in his face. As soon as I did, my phone started blowing up with texts. He was sitting outside my apartment sending message after message about how much he loved me, how Anelise was just a mistake, how he wanted to make things work with me. After an hour of this, I finally texted back telling him to go home to his baby. He responded that Anelise and the baby, they named her Lily, were staying with her parents. That's when the texts got darker. He said he couldn't live without me, that he might hurt himself if I didn't forgive him. I immediately called his brother Steven, who I'd met a few times, to check on him. Steven sounded tired when he answered, like he'd been dealing with Nick's drama too. Steven confirmed Nick was at his place, perfectly fine, just hammered and feeling sorry for himself. Before hanging up, Steven apologized to me. "He's always been like this," he said, creating messes and expecting everyone else to clean them up. That stuck with me. The next few weeks were a constant barrage of Nick's attempts to get me back. He sent flowers to my workplace. He left voicemails where I could hear him crying. He even got mutual friends to reach out on his behalf. I stayed firm in my decision to keep my distance, but it was exhausting. Then came the financial manipulation. Nick called me late one night, sounding desperate. He explained that Anelise had quit her job during the pregnancy, expecting him to support her and the baby. He claimed he couldn't afford it on his own and was thinking of just disappearing to avoid the responsibility. The thought of that innocent baby girl growing up without a father, just like we both had, hit me hard. I made the mistake of agreeing to meet him for coffee to talk about it. He showed up looking terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing the same hoodie he'd had on when we met at the hospital. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. That's exactly what he wanted. Over the next hour, Nick laid out this whole sob story about how overwhelmed he was, how Anelise was unstable and controlling, how he was afraid she wouldn't let him see Lily if he couldn't provide financially. He kept saying things like, "You're the only one who understands me, and I need you in my life to get through this." Against my better judgment, I started texting with him again regularly. I told myself it was just to make sure he didn't abandon his responsibilities to Lily. In reality, I was getting sucked back into his orbit, exactly where he wanted me. Nick started sending me pictures of Lily, updating me on her development. She was cute, with his dark hair and Anelise's button nose. I found myself looking forward to these updates, feeling invested in this baby's life even though I had no real connection to her. About a month after the hospital incident, Nick invited me to his apartment to talk about us. I agreed, thinking I was strong enough to resist whatever manipulation he had planned. I was wrong. When I arrived, he had recreated our first date. Same cocktails, same playlist, even ordered food from the same restaurant. He'd cleaned up his usually messy apartment and was wearing the outfit he'd worn when we first met. It was like he was trying to transport us back to before all the lies. We talked for hours. He cried. I cried. He swore he'd never lied about loving me, that he'd just made a terrible mistake with Anelise before realizing I was the one. By the end of the night, we were kissing on his couch, and all my resolve had melted away. The next morning, I woke up in his bed feeling like I'd betrayed myself. But Nick was so attentive, making me breakfast, telling me how happy he was that we were working things out. He suggested a new arrangement. He would co-parent with Anelise while building a life with me. It sounded reasonable when he said it, like we were all adults who could handle this complicated situation maturely. I agreed to try. What a joke that turned out to be. The first time I met Anelise properly was during a baby handoff. Nick had Lily for the afternoon and asked if I wanted to come along to pick her up. I was nervous but curious about this woman who was now permanently connected to my boyfriend's life. Anelise opened the door of her small apartment with Lily on her hip. She was pretty in a natural way. Curly brown hair, minimal makeup, tired eyes. She looked me up and down with a cold expression before handing the baby to Nick without a word. As we were leaving, she called out, "Make sure she's back by 6. Unlike some people, I keep my promises. In the car, Nick rolled his eyes and muttered about how difficult she was being. I asked how long they had been together, and his answer was vague. Just a few months before I met you. Later, I found out it was more like a year and a half of on and off dating. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Nick was constantly stirring up drama between Anelise and me. He'd tell me that Anelise said negative things about me, then tell her I was trying to replace her as Lily's mom. Neither was true, but we had no way of knowing that since we never actually talked to each other directly. One day, Nick asked me to drop off some baby supplies at Anelise's place because he was stuck at work. When I got there, Anelise looked surprised to see me. "He told me he was bringing these himself," she said, taking the bag from me. We stood awkwardly in her doorway for a moment before she sighed and invited me in for coffee. Sitting in her small kitchen, surrounded by baby bottles and burp cloths, we had our first real conversation. It was stiff and uncomfortable at first, but as we talked, I realized she wasn't the unstable, controlling person Nick had described. She was just a tired new mom trying to figure things out. "How long have you and Nick been together?" she asked, bouncing Lily on her knee. "About a year," I replied. "Though we had a break when he found out about you." Annelise's face changed. "A year? He told me you two only started dating 3 months ago after we broke up for good." My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and showed her pictures of Nick and me from 8 months back. Her eyes widened, and she showed me texts from the same time period where Nick was telling her he loved her and wanted to build a family. We spent the next 2 hours comparing notes, realizing Nick had been lying to both of us consistently. He told Anelise I knew about her pregnancy from the beginning and was fine with it. He told me they were barely together when she got pregnant. He told her I was obsessed with him and wouldn't let him go. He told me she trapped him with the pregnancy. By the time I left Anelise's apartment, we had exchanged numbers and promised to keep each other informed. I drove home in a daze, trying to process the extent of Nick's deception. When I confronted Nick that night, he turned it all around on me. "You went behind my back to talk to her? How could you betray my trust like that?" he shouted, pacing around my living room. "She's manipulating you, can't you see that? She's always been jealous of what we have." He was so convincing, so hurt by my betrayal, that I actually found myself apologizing to him. That's how good he was at gaslighting. He left my apartment that night acting like the wounded party, and I lay awake wondering if I'd overreacted. The next day, Anelise texted me a screenshot of messages Nick had sent her that morning, calling me paranoid and unstable, assuring her that he was only with me because he felt sorry for me. I sent her back screenshots of him telling me the same things about her. We decided to meet again, this time at a coffee shop near my work. Anelise brought Lily, who was now 3 months old and starting to smile. Despite the circumstances, I couldn't help but coo at her chubby cheeks and tiny hands. "I don't know what to do," Anelise admitted, adjusting Lily's blanket. "He's Lily's father. I can't just cut him out of her life." I nodded, understanding her dilemma. "And I can't seem to break free from him emotionally," I confessed. "Every time I try to end things, he knows exactly what to say to pull me back in." We sat in silence for a moment. 2 women manipulated by the same man, unsure of how to move forward. Then Anelise suggested something that changed everything. "What if we work together instead of against each other?" she proposed. "We could compare notes, support each other, make sure he can't play us off each other anymore." It was the beginning of an unlikely alliance. We started texting regularly, checking in about what Nick was saying and doing. We caught him in lie after lie, telling me he was with Lily when he was actually out with friends, telling Anelise he couldn't afford child support because he was helping me with rent. He wasn't. Nick sensed something was up. He started checking my phone when I wasn't looking, questioning who I was talking to. I created a separate chat with Anelise under a fake name in my contacts. We were careful, strategic, gathering evidence of his manipulation without letting on that we were onto him. The situation came to a head when Nick showed up at my apartment one night, clearly hammered, accusing me of turning Anelise against him. "She's not letting me see Lily as much," he slurred, pushing past me into my living room. "You must have said something to her." I stayed calm, recording the conversation on my phone in my pocket like Anelise and I had planned. "I barely know Anelise," I lied. "Maybe she's just being protective of her daughter." Nick's face darkened. "Our daughter," he corrected, moving closer to me. "And you're trying to come between us. I see how you look at Lily, like you wish she was yours." The conversation quickly spiraled. Nick went from accusing me of sabotage to declaring his undying love to threatening to disappear from all our lives. Throughout it all, I kept my phone recording, capturing every contradiction, every manipulation tactic. When he finally left, I sent the recording to Anelise. She called me immediately, crying. "He did the exact same thing to me last week," she said. "Accused me of turning you against him, said I was keeping Lily from him out of spite." We realized then that Nick's game was more calculated than we thought. He was deliberately creating conflict, playing the victim with both of us to keep us emotional and off balance. It was working too. Both of us were exhausted from the constant drama. The next day, I went through my phone and found old texts from Nick that I'd forgotten about. Messages from our early dating days where he'd mentioned being tied up with family stuff, on nights I now knew he was with Anelise. Pictures he'd sent me that were clearly taken in her apartment. Evidence of his double life that had been right in front of me all along. I compiled everything into a folder. Screenshots, recordings, photos with timestamps. Anelise did the same. We met again, this time at her place after Lily was asleep, and laid out all our evidence on her kitchen table. The pattern was undeniable. Nick wasn't just a cheater. He was a calculated manipulator who thrived on creating chaos. "We need to confront him," I said, looking at the mountain of evidence. "Together, so he can't twist things." Anelise nodded, determination in her eyes. "But we need to be smart about it. He'll try to turn us against each other again." We came up with a plan. Anelise would invite Nick over to discuss Lily's schedule. I would already be there. We'd present our evidence calmly, without emotion, making it clear we weren't fighting over him. We were united against his manipulation. The day of the confrontation, I was so nervous I could barely eat. I arrived at Anelise's apartment early, helping her tidy up while Lily napped. We arranged the evidence on the coffee table, printed screenshots, a timeline of his lies, recordings ready to play on our phones. When Nick knocked on the door, Anelise took a deep breath before answering. His face when he walked in and saw me sitting there was priceless. Shock, confusion, then quick calculation as he tried to figure out what was happening. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. "Is everything okay with Lily?" "Lily's fine," Anelise said, gesturing to the couch. "We need to talk to you about something else." Nick sat down cautiously, his eyes darting to the papers on the table. I could see him trying to maintain control of the situation, plastering on that charming smile that had fooled me for so long. "We know everything, Nick," I said simply. "We've been comparing notes for weeks." His smile faltered. "I don't know what you mean." Anelise picked up the first screenshot. Messages where he told her I was clingy and temporary, while simultaneously telling me she was unstable and using the baby to control him. "Want to explain this?" she asked, her voice steadier than I expected. Nick tried every trick in his playbook. He denied. He deflected. He accused us of ganging up on him. He tried to play on Anelise's fears about Lily growing up without a father. He tried to remind me of our special connection and all we'd been through together. When none of that worked, he got angry. He stood up, pointing fingers, raising his voice. "This is ridiculous. You're both acting crazy. I've done nothing but try to make this impossible situation work." I played one of the recordings. Nick telling me Anelise was keeping Lily from him out of spite, followed by him telling Anelise the same thing about me. His face went pale. "Why?" Anelise asked, her voice breaking slightly. "Why do all this? Why not just be honest from the beginning?" Nick collapsed back onto the couch, the fight suddenly leaving him. He looked smaller somehow, less intimidating now that his manipulation was exposed. "I don't know," he mumbled. I didn't want to lose either of you." "You never really had either of us," I pointed out. "Not the real us. You had these versions of us that you created and controlled. We talked for hours." Nick cycled through more tactics, self-pity, promises to change, minimizing his actions. But with both of us there, supporting each other, his manipulation couldn't take hold. By the end of the night, the truth was clear to everyone. Nick wasn't capable of the honest relationship either of us deserved. "I think you should leave," Anelise finally said. "We can talk about arrangements for Lily later, through my lawyer." Nick looked at me, a last desperate attempt. "And us?" "There is no us," I said firmly. "There never really was." After he left, Anelise and I sat in silence for a few minutes. Then, unexpectedly, we both started laughing, a release of tension, of the absurdity of what we'd been through. "I can't believe we fell for his crap for so long," Anelise said, wiping tears from her eyes. "I can't believe we're sitting here laughing about it together," I replied. Lily woke up then, her cries coming through the baby monitor. Anelise went to get her, returning with a sleepy-eyed baby in her arms. She sat next to me on the couch, and Lily reached out a tiny hand toward me. "I think she likes you," Anelise said with a small smile. "Better taste in people than her mom." I gently took Lily's hand, letting her wrap her fingers around my thumb. "Better than both of us," I corrected. "But we're learning." The weeks after the confrontation weren't easy. Nick tried repeatedly to get back into both our lives. He showed up unannounced. He sent long, emotional emails. He tried to use mutual friends as intermediaries. But the spell was broken. Every manipulation tactic that had worked before was now transparent and ineffective. Anelise got a formal custody agreement through mediation, giving Nick structured visitation with Lily while protecting herself from his chaos. I changed my number and blocked him on all social media. I started therapy to understand why I'd been vulnerable to his manipulation in the first place. Surprisingly, Anelise and I stayed in touch. What started as an alliance against Nick evolved into a genuine friendship. We had brunch on Sundays. I helped her assemble Lily's crib when she moved to a new apartment. She introduced me to her single cousin who actually turned out to be a decent guy. 6 months after our confrontation with Nick, I ran into him at a coffee shop. He looked good. He always did. But the sight of him didn't give me butterflies anymore. He asked if we could talk, and I agreed to 5 minutes. I've been getting help, he said, stirring his coffee nervously. Therapy, support groups. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I nodded but didn't offer forgiveness or encouragement. That's good for you. And for Lily. And for you? He asked, that familiar, hopeful look in his eyes. Is there any chance we could? No, I cut him off firmly. That door is closed, Nick. Permanently. He looked disappointed but not surprised. I figured. But I wanted to apologize anyway. You deserved better. Yes, I agreed, standing up to leave. I did. And now I know it. Walking away from that coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in months. Nick no longer had any power over me. Not my emotions, not my self-worth, not my future. I'd taken that power back, with unexpected help from the last person I'd have imagined as an ally. Later that day, I met Anelise and Lily at the park. Lily was crawling now, determined to explore every inch of the picnic blanket we'd spread on the grass. As I watched Anelise gently redirect her daughter away from the edge, I marveled at how life takes such unexpected turns. A year ago, I thought Nick was my perfect match, my meant-to-be. Now I knew better. The real relationship that came out of this mess wasn't romantic at all. It was this friendship with Anelise, built on honesty and mutual support after surviving the same storm. What are you smiling about? Anelise asked, handing me a sandwich from the picnic basket. Just thinking about how we got here, I replied, accepting the food. Not exactly where I planned to be, but not a bad place either. Lily crawled over to me, pulling herself up on my knee and babbling happily. I helped her stand, supporting her tiny body as she bounced excitedly. Not a bad place at all, Anelise agreed, watching her daughter with a smile. I sat there in the park with Anelise and Lily, feeling weirdly at peace despite everything we'd been through. Lily was getting so big now, almost 8 months old and trying to stand up by herself. She'd grab onto the edge of the picnic blanket and pull herself up, wobbling for a few seconds before plopping back down with a giggle. It was impossible not to smile watching her. She's got his determination, Anelise said, noticing me watching Lily, but hopefully none of his other traits. I laughed and handed Lily a soft toy she was reaching for. Let's hope not. One Nick in the world is more than enough. We'd settled into this strange but comfortable friendship over the past couple months. Sometimes we'd get together just to vent about Nick's latest antics. Other times we wouldn't mention him at all, just enjoying each other's company and watching Lily grow. Today was one of those peaceful days where he felt distant, like a bad dream we'd both had but were finally waking up from. Then my phone buzzed. Nick's name popped up on the screen, and my stomach immediately knotted. I hadn't blocked his new number yet after he'd somehow gotten it from a mutual friend. I hesitated before opening the message. We need to talk. It's important. Please. I showed it to Anelise, who rolled her eyes. What do you think it is this time? Another emergency that's really just him wanting attention? Probably, I said, putting my phone away without responding. I'm not falling for it again. But 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Then Anelise's phone rang too. We looked at each other with raised eyebrows. That's new, she said, declining the call. He usually doesn't double-team us anymore. My phone buzzed again with a text. I know you're with Anelise. I need to talk to both of you. It's about Lily. That got our attention. Anelise grabbed my phone and read the message, her face immediately hardening. What about Lily? She muttered, texting him back from my phone. He responded right away. I'm thinking of filing for full custody. My lawyer says I have a good case. Anelise's face went pale. She handed me back my phone and immediately started packing up the picnic stuff. We need to go, now. I helped her gather everything while she picked up Lily, who started fussing at having her playtime interrupted. In the car, Anelise was quiet, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. He's bluffing, I said, trying to sound confident. There's no way any judge would give him full custody. You don't know Nick like I do, she replied, her voice tight. When it comes to getting what he wants, he'll do anything. And he has money for better lawyers than I can afford. We drove to her apartment, and I helped carry Lily and the picnic stuff inside. Once Lily was settled in her playpen, Anelise collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. I can't lose her, she whispered. She's everything to me. I sat next to her, putting my arm around her shoulders. You won't lose her. We have all that evidence of his manipulation. No court would take a child from her mother and give her to someone like that. Anelise looked up at me, her eyes red. Evidence of him being a crappy boyfriend, sure. But he's careful around Lily. He plays the perfect dad when anyone's watching. My phone buzzed again. Nick was asking if we could meet tomorrow to discuss things civilly. I showed Anelise, who nodded reluctantly. We should hear what he has to say, she said. Maybe we can talk him out of this. I agreed to set up the meeting at a coffee shop near my place. Neutral territory seemed safest. That night, I barely slept, running through scenarios in my head. What if Nick really did try to take Lily? What if he succeeded? I'd grown attached to that little girl, and the thought of her being raised by someone as manipulative as Nick made me sick to my stomach. The next morning, I got to the coffee shop early and grabbed a table in the corner where we could talk privately. Anelise arrived next, looking like she hadn't slept either. She had Lily with her in a stroller, sleeping peacefully. I couldn't leave her with my mom, Anelise explained. I just couldn't. I understood. With Nick's threat hanging over us, I wouldn't have let Lily out of my sight either. Nick showed up 10 minutes late, looking annoyingly put together in a button-down shirt and jeans. He smiled when he saw Lily, leaning down to kiss her forehead before sitting across from us. The gesture made my skin crawl. Thanks for meeting me, he said, his voice calm and reasonable. I wanted to talk face-to-face about this. About how you're threatening to take Lily away from her mother? I said, not bothering to hide my anger. Nick sighed, like we were being difficult. It's not a threat. I've been thinking a lot about what's best for Lily, and I believe she needs stability. A proper family environment. Anelise's voice was ice cold. She has stability. With me. In that tiny apartment, working 2 jobs to make ends meet? Nick shook his head. I can provide so much more for her. My parents are willing to help out. She'd have her own room, a yard to play in. Material things don't make a good parent, I said. And speaking of stability, how many women have you dated since Lily was born? 4? 5? Nick's eyes narrowed at me. This isn't about you. This is between me and Anelise. No, Anelise said firmly. She stays. We're in this together now. That seemed to throw Nick off balance for a moment. He hadn't expected us to still be united. He recovered quickly, though, pulling out his phone. Fine. Then you should both see this. He pulled up some photos and slid the phone across the table. They were pictures of Anelise's apartment, taken through the window from outside. The place looked messier than usual, with baby clothes and toys scattered everywhere. My lawyer says this kind of living environment raises concerns. Anelise gasped. You've been spying on me? Taking pictures through my window? That's stalking, Nick. He shrugged. I'm concerned about my daughter's welfare. Any father would be. I felt rage building inside me. You're unbelievable. You're not concerned about Lily. You're just mad that you can't control Anelise anymore. Nick ignored me, focusing on Anelise. I don't want to do this the hard way, but I will if I have to. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Here's my offer. Joint custody, 50-50 split. We both know the courts favor mothers, so this is generous. Anelise was shaking. You barely showed interest in being a father until now. You missed her doctor's appointments. You've canceled your visitation days last minute. And suddenly you want her half the time? People change, Nick said simply. I've realized what's important. I couldn't take it anymore. This is bullpoop and you know it. You're just using Lily as a way to keep Anelise tied to you. Nick's mask slipped for just a second, anger flashing in his eyes before he composed himself. Think whatever you want. My lawyer will be in touch. He stood up, kissed Lily again, and walked out. As soon as he was gone, Anelise broke down crying. I moved to her side of the table, hugging her while trying not to wake Lily. He can't do this, she sobbed. He can't take her from me. He won't, I promised, though I wasn't sure how we'd stop him. We'll figure this out. Over the next week, Nick escalated his campaign. He sent Anelise a formal letter from his lawyer outlining his custody demands. He, coincidentally, showed up at places he knew we'd be, always perfectly behaved, always making a show of being the devoted father. He even started a public Instagram account documenting his daddy-daughter days, carefully crafted to make him look like father of the year. Anelise was a wreck. She cleaned her apartment obsessively, afraid he'd take more pictures. She started documenting everything. Every time Nick was late for pickup, every canceled visit, every text where he seemed disinterested in Lily's well-being. I helped her organize it all, but we both knew it might not be enough. I can't afford a good lawyer, she admitted one night as we sat on her floor sorting through papers. My savings are almost gone from when I was on maternity leave. I thought about it for a minute, then made a decision. I have some money saved for a trip to Europe. It's not a ton, but it could help with legal fees. Anelise looked up, shocked. I can't take your vacation money. You're not taking it. I'm offering it. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Lily's more important than seeing the Eiffel Tower. With tears in her eyes, Anelise accepted. The next day, we found a family lawyer who specialized in difficult custody cases. Her name was Olivia, and she didn't sugarcoat things. These stalker photos he took are concerning, but they don't show any actual danger to the child, she explained in our first meeting. His behavior is creepy but not technically illegal in this context. So he can just get away with it? I asked, frustrated. Olivia shook her head. I didn't say that. I said we need more. Has he ever threatened either of you directly? Any history of violence or substance abuse? We shook our heads. Nick was manipulative, not violent. That was part of what made him so dangerous. He knew exactly how far to go without crossing legal lines. What about his motivations? Olivia asked. You said you believe he's doing this to maintain control, not out of genuine concern for Lily? Absolutely, I said. He didn't even want to be involved at first. He only started showing interest when Anelise and I became friends, and he couldn't manipulate us separately anymore. Olivia tapped her pen against her notepad. If we could prove that his custody filing is retaliatory and not in good faith, that would help our case significantly. How do we prove what's in his head? Anelise asked. We need him to admit it, Olivia said simply. People like Nick often can't resist bragging about how clever they are. That gave me an idea. It was risky, but it might be our only shot. I explained it to Anelise and Olivia, who both looked skeptical, but agreed it was worth trying. The next day, I texted Nick asking to meet alone. Just me and him, to talk about the situation. He agreed immediately, probably thinking he could drive a wedge between Anelise and me. We met at a bar where we'd gone on one of our early dates. I chose it deliberately, hoping the familiar setting would make him comfortable. I arrived early and picked a quiet booth in the back. When Nick showed up, he slid in across from me with that charming smile I used to fall for. I'm glad you reached out, he said. I was hoping you'd see reason. I took a deep breath and launched into the script we'd prepared. Look, I get it. You're mad that Anelise and I teamed up against you. This custody thing is your way of hitting back. Nick's smile faltered slightly. That's not it at all. I'm concerned about Lily's well-being. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Come on, Nick. It's just us now. You can drop the act. I know how you operate, remember? I've seen your playbook. He studied my face, trying to figure out my angle. I kept going, pushing harder. Honestly, it's kind of impressive. Using Lily to get back at Anelise is genius. She's completely freaking out just like you wanted. Something shifted in Nick's expression, a flicker of pride. He took a sip of his drink, then set it down carefully. It's not just about getting back at her. No? I raised an eyebrow. What else? He leaned in closer. Think about it. If I get joint custody, Anelise is tied to me forever. She can't just cut me out of her life anymore. Neither can you, if you stay friends with her. My stomach turned, but I kept my face neutral. So this was never about Lily? Nick shrugged. Lily's great. I love her, but she's also useful. He smiled, that same boyish smile that used to make me melt. You have to admit, it's a pretty good plan. I nodded slowly. And the Instagram account? The perfect dad routine? Window dressing, he said dismissively. Courts eat that poop up. My lawyer says judges love to see fathers who are involved on social media. What happens if you actually get joint custody? I asked. You'd have Lily half the time. That's a lot of responsibility. Nick waved his hand. My mom would help. Or I'd hire someone. The point is winning. I felt sick but kept my composure. You always did like to win. Exactly. He reached across the table and touched my hand. You get it. That's why we were good together. I pulled my hand away, unable to stand his touch. I should go. Anelise is waiting to hear how this went. Nick's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you telling her? I stood up, grabbing my purse. Just that we talked. Thanks for being honest with me. As I walked out, I felt my heart racing. In my purse was my phone, which had been recording our entire conversation. Nick had just handed us exactly what we needed. The next day, Olivia listened to the recording with a growing smile. This is perfect, she said when it finished. He admits the custody filing isn't about Lily's best interests. It's about control and retaliation. Anelise looked at me in amazement. I can't believe he actually said all that. His ego couldn't resist, I said. He wanted to impress me with how clever he is. Olivia warned us the recording might not be admissible in court depending on state laws, but it would be extremely effective in negotiations. She called Nick's lawyer that afternoon, requesting a meeting to discuss settlement. 2 days later, we all sat in Olivia's office. Me, Anelise, Nick, and his lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit. Nick looked confident until Olivia mentioned she had evidence of his true motivations for seeking custody. My client is genuinely concerned for his daughter's welfare, Nick's lawyer said smoothly. Is he? Olivia asked, pulling out her phone. Let's hear what he has to say when he thinks no one's listening. The color drained from Nick's face as she played the recording. His lawyer's expression hardened with each damning word. When it finished, the room was silent. That recording may not be admissible, Nick's lawyer said finally, but his confidence was clearly shaken. Perhaps not, Olivia agreed, but it would certainly be interesting to the family court mediator. And the court of public opinion, should it find its way online. Nick and his lawyer asked for a moment alone. When they returned, Nick wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. We're willing to withdraw the petition for joint custody, his lawyer said stiffly. Mr. Peterson will accept the original visitation schedule, with some minor adjustments. Relief washed over Anelise's face. I squeezed her hand under the table. The lawyers worked out the details while Nick sat silently, defeated. When everything was settled, he finally looked up at me. You set me up, he said quietly. I shrugged. I learned from the best. After the papers were signed, Nick left without another word. Anelise hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Just let me be auntie to Lily, I said. That's payment enough. In the months that followed, Nick stuck to the visitation schedule but kept his distance from both of us. No more manipulation, no more games. The threat of that recording going public was enough to keep him in line. Anelise and I stayed friends, our bond stronger than ever after everything we'd been through. I helped her move to a better apartment, and she helped me start dating again, vetting potential guys with a ruthlessness born from experience. One Sunday afternoon, about a year after the whole custody battle, we were at the park watching Lily, now walking and babbling, chase pigeons across the grass. Anelise turned to me with a serious expression. I added you as Lily's guardian in my will, she said. If anything ever happens to me, I want her with someone who'll protect her from Nick's games. I was speechless for a moment, touched beyond words. Are you sure? She nodded. There's no one I trust more. We watched Lily toddle back to us, a dandelion clutched in her tiny fist. She handed it to me with a proud smile, then ran off to find more treasures. We did good, didn't we? Anelise said, watching her daughter, beating him at his own game. I twirled the dandelion between my fingers. We did better than good. We won. And looking at Lily's happy face, free from Nick's manipulation and games, I knew that was the absolute truth.